So I have this really bad habit. Anytime I get into a new hobby, I feel like I have to buy all the things to be able to do it well. And I think this kind of started for me back when very young. I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I started playing basketball in this rec league, right? And I remember, if you do too, maybe when you were a kid, I just needed all the things, right? I needed the shoes, the shorts, the shirt, but not just that. I needed the good socks, I needed the good sweatbands, and I also needed, for some reason, the good wristbands, okay? And so I remember going to my mom and dad, and I was like, Mom, Dad, I need the wristband. I'm not gonna be able to play well. You're gonna be so ashamed of me if I don't have a wristband. And so they were always very proud of me, but they're like, sure, we'll get you the wristband. I remember the first time I stepped onto the court with that thing, I was like Michael Jordan, okay? Or LeBron if he's your GOAT, it doesn't matter. But I was like, I'm the greatest person to ever touch the hardwood. And I remember at one point, I think my memory is maybe playing tricks on me. I don't know, my parents, we still argue about this. I thought when I went up for a layup one time that I had to duck to miss the rim. I was 6 years old, it was an 8-foot hoop. I did not duck. But like, I remember being like, yo, this wristband though, this wristband. And chances are you've probably been somewhere like that before. Maybe it wasn't a wristband, but we've all done it with something, right? You've seen that perfectly timed influencer ad and thought, oh, if you could just have that, it would make things so much better, right? It's the marketing story that we tend to buy into. And we don't think this way by accident. We've gotten here by design. We're surrounded by a world that tells us we need to have the newest, the greatest, the best stuff of all time. And when I say stuff, I mean the products that we buy that we don't always need. We think that if we could just get that new pair of shoes, then you're gonna run so fast. If you get that new upgraded console, you will always get the dub. That new skincare line, then your skin will look, perfect. Those new workout clothes, then you're gonna crush it in the gym. But here's the problem. It's rarely true and it never ends. There will always be something around the corner that's better than what you have. The second that you buy that new phone, a countdown starts till the next one comes out. As soon as you buy the season pass in that video game, the next DLC is around the corner. We are surrounded by a system that convinces us we have to have the newest thing while simultaneously making it impossible to have. Let me illustrate this for you. Back in 2014, before some of y'all were even in elementary school, Apple released the iPhone 6. Now, nobody knew they needed a bigger phone until this ad came out. Now everybody's saying, Mom, I want the iPhone 6, okay? Trust me, it's bigger, and you know I need a bigger phone. Fast forward to 2017, skip a release and look at the iPhone 8. Now people are like, oh, whoa, time out. They got it like this now? I want the phone in red. No, I need the phone in red. Even though it does absolutely nothing different than the iPhone 7. And even though you're gonna probably cover up the color with a case anyway, teenagers were still like, Mom, I need the iPhone 8. It's red. Now let's skip all the way ahead to one of the most recent iPhones. Wow, y'all, it's titanium. Titanium. We never knew we needed a titanium phone. Now, Mom, I need the titanium phone. It's important. We don't even know what titanium is. And no, it's not that stuff from Wakanda. And yet we feel like more than if we can get this and less than if we can't. That's the world of artificial advertising that we live in. There's actually a word for this system, the unspoken set of rules that we live by. It's called consumerism. It's the idea that more or new always equals better. It's easy to buy into this system because we've been surrounded by it most of our lives. The second you were kids watching videos online, you were seeing ads trying to sell you something. And if we're not careful, we'll use the things that we own or the things that we don't to define our identity. Let me explain. Having stuff is an easy way to show the people around us who we are or what we're like. When we look up to influencers or athletes and celebrities selling us products because they are paid to, then we end up wanting more too. We either buy whatever it is and use that product to show people who we are, or we realize that the product is out of reach and define ourselves by what we lack, just hoping that someday we can get our hands on it. We hear sayings like, money can't buy happiness. And we might believe it in our head that it's true, but because of the system around us, it doesn't always feel that way. Consumerism is a way of living that leaves us in a constant state of discontent. It tells us that we'll never be happy or never be enough without more stuff. It tells us that the more you get, the happier you'll be, and who doesn't want that, right? We've made stuff the measurement for success, even though we've seen that some people who seemingly have it all are still searching for more. And it begs the question, if we use stuff to give ourselves an artificial identity, then where can we find the real thing? There's a story of someone on this same search in the scripture. The Gospel of Mark is the earliest gospel we have record of, and it is also straightforward and easy to read. We pick up this particular story where Jesus is interacting with someone who had it all, but was still left wanting more. Let's start reading in Mark 10:17. As Jesus was starting out on his way to Jerusalem, a man came running up to him, knelt down, and asked, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "Why do you call me good?" Jesus asked. "Only God is truly good. But to answer your question, you know the commandments. You must not murder. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal. You must not testify falsely. You must not cheat anyone. Honor your father and mother." "Teacher," the man replied, "I've obeyed all these commandments since I was young." This man knows that there's more to life than what we see here on earth, and he thinks that Jesus has the answer. So where does Jesus point him? Jesus starts by asking a question about his faith. Has he kept all the commandments? Jesus knew the answer he was gonna give. Jesus knew the man had lived a good life by all the standards, but he asked him anyway. Why? I think Jesus was trying to teach him something important. Let's read what happens next. Looking at the man, Jesus felt genuine love for him. "There's still one thing you haven't done," he told him. "Go and sell all your possessions and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." This man had done all of the things right and played the system well, but there is one thing he didn't account for, that everything he had gathered for himself here on earth was artificial. The real life he was looking for couldn't be found in the system he was using. He had put all his hope in stuff that would always leave him discontent. The answer that Jesus gives isn't to find more, but instead to find a completely different system, meaning a different set of rules to live by. Find your treasure somewhere else, in heaven. In other words, the system of the world, the rules it lives by, is never gonna be enough. Jesus looks at him with compassion, knowing it was gonna be hard to hear. And this is what the man does when he hears Jesus' answer. At this, the man's face fell, and he went away sad, for he had many possessions. For a man who had it all and thought he had done everything right, hearing that it was never gonna give him what he was looking for was just too much. Something was standing in the way of the life that he was looking for. It wasn't the fact that he had lots of stuff. That wasn't the point. Instead, it was where he had put his treasure, where he had put his value, what he was using to define himself. That was standing in the way, and that was the thing that Jesus is calling him to get rid of. It was only by getting rid of the artificial identity that he had built for himself that he could find something real. Jesus is showing him that there is a better system, and it has nothing to do with the stuff that we have. Instead, he could have nothing and be in a better position than where he sat with all the stuff in the world. When you've used one system to define yourself your entire life, it can be hard to find another way. After the man walks away, even the disciples are amazed at what Jesus told this guy to do. They throw up their hands thinking, if a guy like that doesn't have a good life, who does? It must be impossible to get this right. Then Jesus answers them, saying, "Humanly speaking, it is impossible, but not with God. Everything is possible with God." The rich man would never find what he was looking for apart from God. If you and I buy into the system of consumerism that we're surrounded by, it doesn't matter if we end up with a lot or a little. We won't find what we're looking for. Why? Because stuff is never powerful enough to define who we are. Only God can do that. Just like the rich man, our stuff doesn't define us. Instead, it's realizing that God has more for you. God offers things like peace and joy and hope and a full life. All the stuff we're looking for in life, fulfillment, purpose, and love. are found in Jesus. It's way more than the stuff that we have or don't have. In the most simple terms, it's you understanding that my stuff does not define me. As long as we define ourselves by our possessions, we'll be looking for our identity in all the wrong places. But if we trust that what God has for us is better than the material things we're surrounded by, then we'll never be left wanting more. So, how do we do it? Just like the rich man, finding a different system to live by is hard. It's something we have to chase every single day. Defining ourselves with stuff is built into the culture that we are surrounded by, and it isn't gonna change anytime soon. But we can learn to ask good questions when we start wanting more. The next time you find yourself longing for more stuff, ask yourself these 3 questions. First, what do I want more of? What's catching your eye at the moment? What do you just have to have? Second, why do I want more of it? Sometimes the answer is simple. Sometimes we want more because we need more. We want money because we hear that our family is struggling. We want new clothes because the ones we have are falling apart. Sometimes you do need more, and you don't have to feel bad about that. But other times, there might be more to the story. There's always a difference between what we need and what we want. And third, who's convincing you to want more? If we find ourselves wanting what we don't need, it's usually because someone has told us to. So, who's telling you to look for treasure somewhere you won't ever find it? Your stuff, it doesn't define you. Only God can do that. It is in God that we can find a life that will leave us content instead of a life that will always leave us searching for what's next. And it won't be easy. Finding your worth in God instead of the system of consumerism we're surrounded by is always gonna feel weird and different. If we can trust God in the midst of that, we'll learn to look for our treasure with God instead of the world around us. This week, when you find yourself wanting more or comparing what you don't have with the people around you, remind yourself, my stuff does not define me. Pay attention to the story you tell yourself about the stuff that you have, and don't forget to ask, what do I want more of? Why do I want more of it? And who is telling me that I need it? On your way to small group, think about this question. When's the last time you let your stuff define who you are?